Zadonde and Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the latest episode 96 of My Hero Academia. This episode is obviously labeled Match 3 Conclusion, which, as you can expect, is the conclusion of the third match. Which, honestly, it's a bit interesting to note how quickly this arc feels like it's going. Many of these battles that we're seeing in previous arcs, these would have taken multiple episodes to get through, with a large majority of these fights taking extremely long times, especially based off of what we just saw with the other arc, the Hideout Raid arc, which, keep in mind, the Hideout Raid arc is the longest arc in the entire series. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of fans of the manga actually didn't watch the anime after seeing that, after reading through that part. Basically, they read through the manga, it was really long, and so they decided to skip over that arc in the anime in order to basically cool off from that. And instead watched, they may not have even watched any of My Hero Academia that season. Which is understandable, especially considering the fact that that arc was basically a one-for-one recreation. And it kind of feels like this arc is kind of still making up for that. Which, let's be honest, the previous arc kind of did that already, being, I believe that was the shortest arc of the entire series, with possibly the only ones that were shorter being the first few arcs that were, you could barely even call arcs that were within the first season. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to it, and it's not really important right now. But let's actually talk about this episode and what has happened within it. Pretty much, as I've been saying since basically the beginning of this whole series, this season, is that the series continues to feel a lot better reworked. Basically reworking certain scenes to basically make it feel like it flows better. And I've been saying that for a while, that a lot of these different aspects that we've been seeing have been flowing just better, making sure that they each work well as the story continues, which, needless to say, is really impressive what they've been able to do with it, and making sure that these battles feel real, and also a lot more with the aspect of the commentating, because of the fact that this is basically the first time that a lot of the classmates have actually gotten to see their classmates go full force, going as hard as they possibly can to truly show off what they can do. Like I said, this is their very first time seeing a lot of this for many of them, both for Class A and B. While mostly focusing on Class A's interaction with this, it still does a little bit of what Class B is doing. And it's also important to note that it really does show the difference of what these characters are, the difference between these two characters. Class A is, for basically every single battle, they are watching meticulously, noticing what their classmates and the other class have been doing wrong, and how they can improve on that. While Class B, while clearly doing some of that, it's to a much lesser degree. And obviously, Midoriya is the biggest example of what they can do, but in the same aspect, no one's really going above and beyond as much as Deku, so he's kind of a bad example. But it still does show, because of the fact that we see that Mineta Uraraka and Mina, who are within Deku's team, are still sitting around him and listening to what he has to say because they know that they can learn from what the others have done in the past. While a lot of Class B doesn't really feel like they're doing that as much. It really does show a big difference of character and their teaching methods between Endeavor or Vlad King and Aizawa. So, yeah. But I do have to say that a lot of these battles just feel a lot longer, for one thing. There's a reason that I bring that up, because frickin' oh, I love the way that they actually decide to draw Ida's engines in this episode. Because rather than focusing on doing realistic, they decide to instead extend it to really show what he has done to his legs. Making these frickin' engines, or mufflers I should say, be the size of the ones that are on his back. Which, keep in mind, that is not how big they are. They are barely any bit bigger than what they were before. Basically, the ones before were probably about 1 to 2 inches, with the ones that he has now being at most a foot. But it's not actually that much. In a more educated guess, it's like 6 inches. Meanwhile, he has these, which are like 2 feet. Which, no way are they actually that big. And also, it's just insane. There's a lot of different aspects to how Ida is handling this, and I really do like how they handled it. But obviously, it's very different from the original style, and yeah, it's very interesting. Like I said before, though, the battle continues. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty much nothing has changed except for a little bit more with seeing more of the backstory for Todoroki, which we've been seeing a lot of that anyways, but in this battle specifically, it's one panel that we actually get to see in the first place, while in this we get to see a lot of the different things that we've already seen in the past. Like I said, like what they had in the manga, they have that little scene where he's talking to his father. But at the same time, in the episode, they actually add a lot of what has changed him over these past few years, or this past year, with showing off the scenes from Deku talking to him, the interaction with his father, but also we see later that these same aspects are kind of going through Ida's mind. He's remembering a lot of what he has done in the past, and when he catches that the one person, which, yeah, when he later, that's right. So it is later. So when he is coming to save Todoroki, rather than fighting everyone that's there, he instead chooses to pick up Todoroki and run off to save him. Which, in the manga, it's a pretty quick moment, and it's not really that important. But in this anime, they've actually done a lot to that, showing the scene of when he first fought Stain, to help him remember the fact that before he fought, he wanted to make sure that that villain paid for what he did, instead of actually focusing on the thing that he needed to do to help the other hero get away, to get him to safety, to show that he is a true hero. And it's honestly insane to think about that someone as deplorable as Stain left such a good impact on basically all of these characters to make sure that they do well and continue to be really good heroes moving forward. Stain is awful. Killing people just because he doesn't see them as true heroes is truly awful. But because of how he sees heroes and the example that he laid and said for these kids have grown to become more and more heroic. And by the end of that battle, the majority of them, Stain recognized them as being true heroes, which is honestly insane to think about. That kids are true heroes, while other heroes that are pros are considered not to be. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but you get the point. It's interesting. Pretty much everything else after that was pretty self-explanatory. A bit more stuff with what exactly was going on, continuing the running gag of the fact that everyone everyone in Class A really hates how much Vlad is being a bit of an asshole. But yeah. There's a lot to it, and it's interesting to say the least. The battle continues, pretty self-explanatory. Nothing really added in any real aspects, except for at the very end when we actually have the discussion. Basically, it's interesting to me, again, that Class A specifically Todoroki and Ida, as soon as the battle is over and they are recovering, rather than wait until they're actually back with the main group and they can actually discuss what they did wrong and what they can do better and what they did right and all of that jazz, they instantly start discussing it. They understand their mistakes and they try to work through them as quickly as possible. And it's interesting to say that only one of Class B's students have actually had the same respect for what they have done in the past and understood that they need to improve, and that is Mudman. Mudman is the only person in Class B who has actually taken a solemn look at what he has done in this battle and looked at how he can actually improve, which is honestly really interesting. Unlike a lot of the... obviously, Class A gets a lot of that from the fact that they have an honestly excellent teacher. But Mudman is interesting because, like Momo and Todoroki, he got in via recommendation. Meaning that if he wanted to, he could have absolutely probably gotten into Class A. But he didn't. And it's interesting to see how different of an aspect he puts on this. He almost got into Class A. I'm not exactly certain on exact details, but the point is that he was on the heels of both of Todoroki and Inasa, I believe. Yeah. Because Momo was in a different test for that because she has different quirk. But the fact is that he was on their heels. If it wasn't for Momo, I think, he probably would have gotten into Class A. Because Inasa went over to the other school. And it's interesting to just note that. And then, obviously, again, there's some really interesting factors moving forward with, again, the ending. A little bit of reworking to basically make things flow a little bit better. Such as, more interactions between the two classes, specifically Monoma being a jackass, and then some really cool stuff on Togata, which is gonna be fun. She's one of my, I think she might be my favorite Class A student Class B student because she just has this weird, interesting quirk that I really can't wait to talk about. Once we actually get into that, I'm totally going to be discussing that like crazy. And also, I do have to say that I am absolutely looking forward to seeing how they're going to rework this new episode. And honestly, it's kind of weird that I'm saying this, but Bakugo's fight was kind of short. If I'm remembering correctly. Like, obviously, it's not extremely short, but it feels a lot quicker than a lot of the previous fights. Because Bakugo does some really interesting stuff, and we will be talking about that as the episode comes. So, if that does get shortened, then, yeah, we're gonna be, discussing that. There's a lot to that. And, yeah, we're gonna be, like I said, we'll be discussing that as it comes out. And then, obviously, we're gonna have the chaos that is the final fight. The 5th fight. Which, I've mentioned before, I think that this is going to be 3 episodes long. Which then brings up the question, what about episode 100? I mentioned in a previous video that I think that there's going to be something really cool happening for episode 100. But the fact is that we only have episode 97, 98, and 99 before we reach 100. And if this fight that we're about to see, the Bakugo versus Class B fight, if that is only 1 episode, that means that they have to they might have to rush the Deku fight, the 5th fight, which, let me be clear on this, I do not want them to rush this fight. This is an interesting fight beyond compare. And if they rush it, I think I'm going to be really disappointed. Honestly, I can understand if they do want to do 2 episodes for it, but I'd prefer 3 episodes, if I'm being honest. Oh, there's a lot to it, and we'll discuss it as we get closer, but yeah, I still think that there's going to be something special for episode 100, just based off the fact that we've seen some really interesting stuff with these characters, and yeah, let's look forward to seeing how this whole thing plays out. And I, for one, am really excited to see what exactly we get for this next fight, the Bakugo fight. But anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to leave a like, leave your thoughts and theories down in the comments below. If you are going to leave a theory, make sure to say theory review somewhere in your comment. And of course, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and ring that notification bell, because it really does help us out a lot more than you may think. And yeah, just please, it helps. It really does. Of course, if you guys do want to support the channel even more, then definitely head down to the description and check out all of our links down there, including our social medias, our other channels, and ways you can support us financially, including the merch store, the book, and of course, our Patreon, which a big thank you to our current patron, Sheeny. But anyways, guys, I've been Electro Ninja, and I will see you guys next time. But on!